afternoon, everyone. Actually, it's morning as I record this, not afternoon. It just feels like afternoon to me, but I guess it could be morning, evening, night, wherever you are listening. Um, Today has just been one of those, it's been a great day. It's a Sunday. I was up way too early, so I got my grocery shopping done at 6 this morning. So even though it's a little after 10 in the morning here, it certainly feels like afternoon because of how productive I've been. And to add to the productiveness, let's record a podcast. So wherever you are and whatever you're doing, thank you for listening, and I'm glad you could join me. I'm Edward, and this is Chatting with the Lightkeeper. And today, for the podcast, rather than talk about a single subject, I thought I would go through some of the questions that have kind of come into the ask box. Ask, not ass. I may be an ass, but these are ask. These are questions, not me being an ass. Although I've been told I'm a gifted ass, so I'll take that to mean I have a good backside. Not that I'm a donkey of a person. So anyway, the first question that rolls in, and just before I get started, just to clarify, for everyone who's asked a question, I have answered them privately. These are not things that have been maybe sitting for weeks and I'm just now getting to. When I do get a question, I do try to answer it as quickly as I can. So the first question that comes in is it's about poly and how does somebody know if they actually are poly? I mean, is it just you people wake up one day and decide to be poly, are poly? How do you know if they're poly or not? Because this person took one of those wonderful online quizzes and it kicked back that they were this and that and that they were poly and they were very surprised by that. So the question then is how do you know if you're actually poly or not? So to start with, poly, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, poly just means that you have one, or not one, but well, potentially one, but open to having more than one romantic relationships together. It's more than saying having a boyfriend or girlfriend and sharing sex with other people, inviting them in for sexual play. That's not poly. It's more of a open or swinging relationship. Poly is actually having, an intimate romantic relationship with more than one person ethically, meaning everyone knows that this is going on because you can be claim to be poly or you can be poly and still be unethical and still cheat. So this is, ethically having multiple people involved, being romantically involved ethically with other people. So it can be kind of a tricky thing to figure out because society programs us that, you know, in simple terms, looking at myself, boy meets girl, boy falls in love, boy marries girl, they buy house, white picket fence, have kids. Very much a monogamous relationship escalator where everything, starts from liking somebody all the way up with a plan to marriage, kids, 401ks, retirements, RV travels, whatever it is retired folks do. All the way from, meeting the person through the end of your life together. And it's that one person forever and ever. And that's what society says we should all be. Well, that's not the case for everybody. That works for a lot of people, and there is nothing wrong with it if that's your jam. Great. But you know, there are other alternatives, other ways. In fact, in 2019, this wonderful group called the Society for the Scientific Study of Sexuality found that 89% of people have considered a non monogamous relationship. Now, that's kind of vague because non monogamy, once again, considers opening up the relationship for sexual play with others, not necessarily poly, where you're romantically involved with others. So it's a little vague, but it is surprisingly, I think, a high number. And yes, I think every guy out there would say that they probably have some sort of threesome fantasy. Put my hand up, myself included. Um, but just because you have these ideas, obviously doesn't mean that 89% of the people out there have acted on them. Um, so, but it does show that I think the importance of that number, whether it's right, wrong, it's not we're not debating the number, but it just shows that you know, humans may not necessarily be monogamous creatures as we've been led to believe by society. So how do you know if you're not monogamous? Now there's no real way, and all those online quizzes that you can take. I've taken a few. I did just for fun for this to see. And since I'm a boy, and I think like most straight boys, I have the fantasy of having a sexual threesome with two women. So when I kept that fantasy in mind when I answered the questions on whether I'm poly or not, of course, every single one of them kicked back that, hey, I was poly. Because not that I thought about having an actual romantic, loving relationship with more than one person. It's because I had this fantasy, and I wasn't, I didn't hide it when it asked the questions about, having a threesome. So it kicked back, and of course, I think every one of them said that I was poly, which I would probably disagree with. But anyway, it wasn't about, me, but I think the online quizzes and surveys and take this test to see if you're dominant or submissive and all that stuff, I think they're skewed. Um, so really getting back to just some thoughts about signs that maybe you're not necessarily monogamous. This may not be that you're poly per se, but maybe you're open to, like me with my fantasy. So perhaps if you're in a monogamous partnership or in the past monogamous partnerships you've been in, you feel kind of stuck. Like you feel, you know, perhaps trapped is the word that comes to mind, and not trapped because the other person is not the right person for you, but just that you love the person, you're in love with the person, they're in love with you, but you still feel like you're wanting more. Doesn't mean you're necessarily poly, but it's just maybe a sign that you can open your mind to consider those options. Um, the other thing that kind of comes up is when it comes to poly, a lot of people think, yeah, I could be poly. That kind of sounds interesting to me. The sticking point that happens is it's very easy, especially especially on the for guys. Guys think, oh, I would love to have two girlfriends at once, and it can be kind of going on that whole threesome fantasy and taking it from threesome fantasy to having two girlfriends at once. And a lot of guys think that would be wonderful. The problem is those same guys don't want their girlfriends to have other boyfriends or girlfriends or partners, whatever. Um, so that's a big thing to consider when you are considering whether or not you are poly. You might feel great about having more than one partner, but you have to also understand that your potential other partners will also potentially have other partners. And is that something that you can handle? And that's it's a big ask, and it's a very challenging subject to think about, and in reality is even more challenging to hear a partner talk about their date last night. Some people are great with it, other people, that's a huge stumbling block. So being poly also entails being able to have open, honest, and deep conversations and being able to talk about fears and insecurities And every person that I've ever met that's poly does talk about having some very, very deep conversations with their partner or partners about, hey, when you were talking about this, I felt this way and I wasn't expecting it, or this feeling was new to me, or, I'm feeling a little jealous, which means I'm feeling that something's a little off. It's a warning signal. We need to talk this through. So there aren't any hard and fast rules on whether you are or are not poly. Um, but I think it's something that more people have thought about than maybe actually admit to it. But just because somebody thinks about it doesn't mean it's the right fit for them. Open minds think about things that are very open, even if they're not for them. They're open to thinking and talking about them. And if you're curious about, being poly, I highly, highly recommend that you invest the time to read a book. It's by Janet Hardy and Dossie Easton, and it's called The Ethical Slut. And it is a fantastic book. Even if you are not poly, even if you are sure that being monogamous is your jam, seriously, if you want a good book on relationships that'll make you a better communicator and just help make sense of relationships, especially if you're kind of kinky, this is a fantastic read, even if you're not poly. But if you're considering poly or are poly, I can't stress this book is just amazing. It's a great relationship tool. So, getting back to things, there isn't a right or wrong way to decide if you're poly or not. It's just going to take a lot of soul searching, a lot of research, and if you're in a relationship, conversations with your partner, those are a must have. If you're considering entering a relationship, you need to be open and honest about where you're at with maybe being in an open relationship with being open to other sexual partners to full on poly with being in relationships with other people. So at this point, we'll pop in, do a quick break, and hear a word from the podcast sponsor, and then we'll come back and answer a few more questions. All right, welcome back. And had a momentary freak out there while I took a break for the ad, and thought I would, look at my phone. And like most of you, when you have a moment, yeah, I'll look at my phone, see if I have any messages, and your phone isn't where you thought you left it, and you don't see it in sight. You kind of have this freak out. And yeah, so I had my where's my phone freak out, and turns out my phone is plugged in charging because last night I forgot to charge it, and I forgot that I was charging it now. So anyway, I have recovered from my missing phone freakout and back to answer a few more of the questions that have come in lately. The next one is somebody who's new, and they're asking two questions. How can I spot a fake dom or submissive? And what is a good website to go to where I can learn more about TS? So the first part on spotting a fake. There's no tried and true method. It really comes down to basically I shouldn't say simple things because they're not simple, but it's a matter of sometimes people are, for whatever reason, enjoy playing the role of being kinky online, and the reality of their life is completely different. So you look for signs that are consistency in words and actions. And by actions, meaning they live their life with to the goals, and basically live their life as a good person. Doesn't matter whether you're kinky or not. A not so nice person is a not so nice person. Another way to spot somebody who is potentially a fake is they are going to be more than likely unwilling or unable to engage in video chats or even phone calls. They will want to blow up your inbox on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever social media you're using, they will be more than happy to blow up your inbox with IMs and DMs and messages, but they're unwilling or unable to take the next step of having video chats, actually putting face to, FaceTiming, sitting there talking with somebody, looking at them, even if they're in your neighborhood, having video chats is a great way to safely start to get to know somebody. And oftentimes, those who are playing the online games will not be willing to do that, or they're available only, for example, during their work hours, and then suddenly at night and weekends when it's family time, they disappear. Um, that's a red flag. So it's really all the red flags that you would talk about with your vanilla friends with online dating. It's no different with the S. The same, red flags exist. Um, Another thing that I just have to say this because it's something I'm becoming more and more aware of, and it's something that I think everybody needs to be conscious of. There are tons and tons of memes and GIFs out there in the world of the internet that always say, a real dominant will do this. A real submissive is this. A real switch is that. And, it almost feels like somehow in the lifestyle we're kind of gatekeeping, trying to keep, and I don't think it's meant to be, but it's if you're a new person, no matter what role you think is the right fit for you, when you see these memes and GIFs and everything that have been shared hundreds of thousands of times that say, here are the 5 things to be a good dominant. And you look at it and you're like, well, I'm 3 out of 5. So, boy, do I have to change to be a good dominant, or do I have to change to be a good submissive? And it's very easy to see these things, even as potential somebody who's new, to look at this and go, boy, that doesn't really fit me. So I guess the lifestyle isn't a fit. It's almost like we're gatekeeping, trying to keep people out, and I don't understand it. Kind of drives me bonkers. Because what makes a good dominant or a good submissive or a good switch or just a good person who enjoys kinky sex is whatever, for them, what makes them good is finding the right partner, being themselves and finding the right partner who everything clicks with. You know, Selfishly, I consider myself a good dominant. You may disagree with that, and that's fine. Um, but I might be a good dominant for a person over there, and somebody else can get to know me and my thoughts and philosophies and think that no, that just doesn't fit with what I feel is a good dominant. So it's very much what it means to you. So don't let the preconceived notion that you must be X, Y, and Z to be a certain role in the lifestyle. And as for spotting a fake, it's a matter of just like you're meeting people in the vanilla world. It's no different, and working hard to suss out whether they're a good person or a bad person. And there are people who online. Recently, there was a huge brouhaha in the Tumblr community not too long ago where Um, a very well followed DS blogger, um, and basically, I don't know, years and years and years built this blog and kind of a cult following. But suddenly, everything people thought they knew about this person came kind of crashing down when the reality of it hit. And anytime you have something like that, you have a huge schism because people think that some people feel that it was a personal attack or a personal vendetta, or that they're good friends with this person, so they're going to have their back no matter what. And other people see this and say, oh my goodness, it's drama. And, I want nothing to do with this greater community because look at all this drama that's getting kicked up. And then there are other people that look at the situation and say, wow, boy, this person really had me snowballed. I need to be more careful. So sometimes spotting a fake or somebody who is not what they seem isn't easy. There are people out there who, um, yeah, they do a great job online of shielding and kind of presenting their version of the world to the world, or what they want to be, or think they are, or, however it works. I don't understand why people go online and are somebody they're not, but it's the greatest thing about the internet, apparently, is you can go on and be anything you want to be, and some people choose to be idiots. Um, Another, and this is certainly not if you're a telltale sign, but if you are a newer person and you are speaking with somebody who is claiming they're experienced in the lifestyle, ask them about their in-person interactions, because if somebody's experienced, they should have had some real world connections, contacts. Do they attend a munch group? Which a munch, if you didn't know, is just a get together of kinky people. You know, have they had relationships? It's something that personally I look for when I am hearing about or interacting with somebody who is claiming to be an experienced dominant or submissive is how they present their real world interactions in the lifestyle. And if you have somebody who is, mm, um, I'll use the example of a kinky Dear Abby, or one of those ask and answer columnists that appear in these old-fashioned things called newspapers, and they're still online, or they're active in like forums where they're chiming in with answers, or they're getting a lot of questions and they're answering them, kind of like what I'm doing today on the podcast, answering some questions that have come in. But that's and they don't necessarily talk about themselves. Like if you see where they talk about other people's mistakes, but they don't talk about their own. They don't talk about engagement outside of online with people. All their engagement seems to be online, their relationships online. There's a vast difference in this lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with exploring it online. And even finding an online romance and an online DS, if that's your jam, rock on, it's good. But there's a huge difference between online and in person. So when looking at for the fake person, look for also some real world interactions. As for sites to learn more, I'm old fashioned. That I am. So rather than say try xyandz.com, I am going to suggest these wonderful things made out of paper called books. Um, the first one, actually, yeah, the first two are once again are by Dossie Easton and Janet Hardy. And it doesn't matter your role; they're beautiful no matter your role. The new topping book and the new bottoming book, both are fantastic. And if you're a dominant, read the new bottoming book as well. And if you're submissive, read the new topping book as well. It's very important to get the perspective from both sides. So there are both of those books. There is the old standby, Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns. It's been around for years and years, but it's a fantastic book. Also, there's S&M 101, A Realistic Introduction. Um, these books are not new, they're not trendy, uh, but they're solid information that has stood the test of time, which is very important. I will, in the description of the podcast, wherever you're listening, have links for these books that I've talked about so you can find them. Um, as far as websites go, you have FetLife, FETLIFE, FetLife.com. It bills itself as sort of the Facebook of the kink, BDSM, DS, any other kinks and fetishes, anything and everything you can find there. It can seem very overwhelming, especially if you're newer, because there's just so much. And of course, since sex sells, it is tilted, of course, to titillizing images and words. And so while it's not a quote unquote dating site, a lot of people do go there looking for partners. Um, and since it's so big, you have to take like little bites if you're going to look for information. If you're curious, go there and just use it. Just little bites and look for something very specific because there are groups and discussions there on anything and everything you could think of and things you've never thought of and probably things that if you bump into them you will never want to think of again. But it covers the gamut. So that's there and you can use it or not, but I still like to read and highly recommend reading. Next question is, what's the difference between a daddy dom and a caregiving dom? And the answer is, um, sorry, I'm not. I try to make things not political, but this just popped to mind. It's kind of like Donald Trump's underwear. Depends. Um, in case you don't know, if you're not from the United States, Depends is an adult diaper for adults with incontinence problems. And the reason why I make the joke is some of the pictures of Donald Trump in suit pants, it looks like he is wearing an adult diaper. Anyway, enough of politics and adult diapers. The term daddy dom little girl relationship has been around for quite a while. And I can remember when I first heard it, I was and kind of got the description of what a daddy dom was. I'm like, well, that really is the first description that kind of feels close to the kind of dominant that I believe I am. But then the whole daddy and little girl thing really creeped me out because it kind of sounded, yeah, it sounded kind of creepy and maybe like incest like and kind of gross because of the way it sounded. So, as kink evolves, terms evolve and change, and a caregiving dom is kind of, to me, what a daddy dom is, but it's removing the potentially icky stereotypes or connotation that daddy dom little girl um, DS relationship has. It's focusing on a dominant who is more parental in nature. Once again, not trying to use terms that are trying to be more specific and kind of remove the ick factor. It can also mean a dominant who, I've seen it used as a dominant who is maybe not the primary dominant for a submissive, and their interactions with that submissive are kind of be like a substitute dominant. Maybe they're in a long distance relationship, and the caregiving dominant would be there to give hands on discipline, perhaps. Maybe that helps the submissive, or in person advice, or things like that. But often there is not a sexual relationship between the caregiver, who is um, typically like the local dominant, if you will, why the primary dominant is distant. So I've seen it that way, but more and more within the lifestyle, it's becoming a replacement term for the term daddy dom. The next question is asked about, from a submissive's point of view, that they're intrigued by the DS lifestyle, but they don't think that anything painful, they're, like even, they say even, even a spanking doesn't appeal to them. So does that mean DS isn't for them? And my answer is no. You pain and anything painful does not have to be part of DS. Just like even kinky sex doesn't have to be part of DS. There are many people involved in the lifestyle who are asexual. So sex is not even a part of the lifestyle for them. So like painful things or things that you feel are painful don't have to be part of what makes DS great for you. Um, DS is very individualistic. You can craft it to be whatever you want it to be. Perhaps the being a leader in a partnership appeals to you. So the role of dominant really appeals to the person, but they don't want to tie up and spank their partner, or engage in, correcting them if they break a rule. Any physically, they're they just don't. That's not their jam. Or either are submissive and they don't want and or enjoy any type of activity that causes pain. That is absolutely fine. It's um, I'm sure there's memes and everything else out there, but DS is never about, or even BDSM isn't about pain or whips or chains or any of that. It's really comes down to trust. It's all about building a trusting relationship and making that relationship what you need and what your partner needs, and what that partnership as it grows, growing together and becoming. So to be involved in DS doesn't mean you have to be into certain things or not into other things. So you can craft a relationship to have it be whatever you want it to be. So you don't have to be into pain or something that you find is a no for you, that's a yum for a lot of other people in a lifestyle, doesn't mean you can't find your home here. Next, what is the difference between a kink and fetish? For years and years, I use these terms interchangeably. And boy, I was wrong. I admit it. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Um, a kink is something that the typical vanilla person would find kinky. Um, and one person's kink is another person's vanilla. For example, kinky for me would be, say, a wooden spoon and a ball gag. A little kinky play with those. Um, and another person may think having sex doggy style is being kinky. So a kink is something that is perhaps out of an individual's norm. It's not what they consider routine or normal. So, in the lifestyle, one person's kink is another person's vanilla. But it's just really anything that is, I guess, for general, out of the vanilla norm. So that's a kink. A fetish is when that kink goes from, hey, um, I don't know, giving a spanking. So that goes from a kink to a fetish when you cannot enjoy an encounter if you don't get to either be spanked or do the spanking. So it's often gets to the point where a fetish, for example, a person cannot actually have an orgasm unless it includes their fetish. So a fetish is a kink that is a must-have to feel that a playtime, an encounter, whatever, a sexual romp or whatever it is, in order to feel satisfied, this has to be included in it. It's not saying that somebody with a fetish can't enjoy, um, or engage in play without their fetish. They certainly can, but to feel satisfied, they have to have this. It's a must have in order to feel completely satisfied. So that's the difference between a kink and a fetish. The next question is, how do you have a conversation with somebody that you're interested in dating, but you don't know if they are familiar with or into DS or BDSM, and you are somebody who's explored the lifestyle, and you know that you need to have the lifestyle be a part of a relationship? Boy, that's a tricky one because I don't believe that you can, like, I don't believe a person can like learn to be submissive or learn to be dominant or learn to be a switch. Sure, somebody can learn, I guess, the skills, if you will, that go along with it and role play that, and do role plays, but to actually have a more than just play with a person, I think there has to kind of be something going on inside the person that makes the lifestyle a home for their soul. I don't think it's something that they can fake being if they're not really there. So how do you find out without, you know, maybe directly asking, because it would be a hard thing to directly ask, which is very, very understandable. Um, the first thought is share a kink positive like article that's out there. Hey, was surfing the internet today, saw this. What are your thoughts on this? Share the article that talks about DS or BDSM and ask for their thoughts. And I look for things that are, kink positive, and there are a lot of kink positive news articles out there. So you can share that, get their feedback. Another thought is, and while this is Hollywood, so anytime we're talking movies and the lifestyle, obviously there's going to be a disconnect between reality and the movies. We all know that movies are fake and for obvious reasons. But maybe share a movie together where DS is a part of the theme of the movie. Maybe not 50 Shades, although it can be. Something that's a conversation starter. My choice would be the movie The Secretary. Um, and so that would be an idea. And another thing that can happen is people can fall in love, build a relationship, and one person is kinky and the other person is not. Doesn't mean the relationship is doomed to fail or anything like that. But there's a great resource. It's another one of those paper products called a book. It's called When Someone You Love is Kinky. And once again, this is by Dossie Easton and Catherine List. Um, and it's a great resource for you to share or read with if you have a partner, if you're kinky and your partner is not, or however it works when, just as the title says, when you love somebody and they're kinky. It's a great book to talk about and kind of for discussions, tips, and all sorts of great things. And even if both of you are kinky, it's still a great book to read. And finally, I guess we'll save the worst for last, or the hard one for last. And I say it's hard just because what the question entails. And this person says, my first DS relationship recently ended. Why does it hurt so badly? It hurts worse than any other relationship, any other breakup I've had. And yeah, it's a hard one and it sucks. Um, so rather than deal with the sucky side of a breakup, because breakups suck, let's start with talking about what happens when we love someone. When we love someone, we can't wait to see them again. The time between, even if they've just left, we already miss them. It's very natural to feel that way, especially when you really love or like somebody. We always make time for them. They make time for us. We make time for them. You you know make sacrifices for them. It's just it's second nature. it's something they need, I'll definitely sacrifice to give them what they need. Um, and if you're newer to DS and you're in love with somebody, you're sharing a lot of first with them, more than likely. Um, Maybe your first spanking or your first kinky bit of play. You're sharing a lot of physical first and also emotional first with them. Um, and of course, the sex with somebody that you love and communicate with is fantastic because you're able to communicate, which makes the sex better. You can talk about it. So it's fantastic. We also tend to idealize those people that we love. We look for their best traits and abilities. We love how they listen to us, how they smile, how they inspire us. And as we love somebody, we find a way to, overlook the flaws. And then as our love grows, we continue to open ourselves up, which means we're making ourselves vulnerable. And we're willing to talk about our flaws. We're willing to, you know, kind of take off our mental clothes and you know show our naked soul to the person that we love, allow them to see our vulnerabilities, our insecurities. And if you're newer to DS, there's it could be your first time or one of your very newer to DS, one of your first relationships. Um, so you're really opening yourself up in a way that you've never opened up to another partner, because that whole DS component perhaps was something you didn't know you had, or if you knew you had, you kept locked away. And so you've unlocked this portion of yourself that you've kept securely stored in your overhead, you know, bin with your luggage during your flight of life until this point when you've pulled it down and you shared it with this partner. And so you're really opening up a new part of yourself that no one has seen, or perhaps few people have seen before. We also reach the point where we don't need to hold back our opinions anymore. We're ready to fire away and share them with them. We see the good and the less good in our partner, and we are willing to put in the work, because as relationships grow, it requires work. And all of this combined causes us to feel deeply, madly in love. And when we break up, um, science tells us that breaking up triggers activities in the brain that are associated with motivation. It's one of the reasons why, after a breakup, sitting on the couch and eating ice cream is one of the ways I've dealt with some wonderful breakups. Um, I love ice cream. Um, but we lose motivation. Our reward center, when we're in a relationship, we love to do for a partner or have our partner do for us. It's just how humans are wired. And then you add the DS element where no matter which side of the slash you're on, that whole reward, being rewarded, giving rewards, doing for a partner, asking a partner to do for us, that's more intense because of the nature of DS. And the other thing that a breakup does is it can awaken addiction cravings. Maybe that explains my ice cream fascination, especially then. But yeah, the breaking up triggers the not so good parts of our brain, or parts of our brain to act in not so good ways, potentially. And because we've opened up, and if you're newer, and even sometimes, um, veteran lifestyle people, breakups can really, really suck because, even as more experienced people in the lifestyle, as we grow in the lifestyle, there's a lot of self reflection that happens. Um, Obviously, it happens for somebody who's newer as well, but as we grow in the lifestyle, we grow as people. So we're continuously learning and we're opening up, no matter whether you're new or not, you're opening up new areas of your heart and you're sharing this with somebody. And so we're sharing very deep things with a partner. And so when a relationship comes to an end, it is it can be very painful. Doesn't always have to be. There can be, mutual partings where parting is friends, parting is good. You realize that you're great people, you just don't work together and not have those negative, or having the negative feelings or as badly as other times. And that happens. But with DS, because we are being so open with a partner and sharing things with them that we don't share the rest of the world, it can make a relationship termination seem to feel worse than perhaps what a vanilla relationship end has felt in the past. Doesn't always have to be that way, isn't always that way, but especially if you're new, it can sting more than what you're expecting. So yeah, I should have thought this through better because that was the last question I had, and boy, I hate leaving things on a downer note like that. So, but it is what it is. That's the end of the questions, and I did a quick think in my brain of something positive to say, and boy, I don't. I guess the one thing that I will say as a positive is no matter what happens in a relationship, whether it's you meet the love of your life and it's great and everything is wonderful and you're spending the rest of your life with this amazing person, or you ended up going and opening your heart up to a person who stomped on it, which happens unfortunately, and we're having that, the breakup hurt and heartache. No matter what, people are lessons. So even if it's not a good lesson, there are still lessons to learn from it. So no matter whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, there are life lessons that come out of every relationship, and everybody teaches us lessons. It's just a matter of whether we as individuals decide to learn the lessons, or if we're going to repeat ourselves 3 or 4 times just to make sure we've got it right before we implement those lessons. So, anyways, I want to thank everybody who's asked questions, and I look forward to answering more questions. If you have questions, just reach out to me. I'm on social media. Just search for Chatting with the Lightkeeper, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm there. Just brand new to Pinterest, just giving that a whirl. So if you're on Pinterest, search for Chatting with the Lightkeeper. Come say hi. So brand new there. Would love for other people who are listening that are on Pinterest to say hi to me there as well. And please don't forget to click the follow button so you never miss an episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. Also, if you listen on Spotify, there's a quick poll question there for you on Spotify mobile to answer if you'd be so inclined. And if you have any questions, just click the feedback button that is on the podcast wherever you listen, and I will be more than happy to answer any and all questions. And I guess shouldn't say answer, because answer implies that I have the right, like my response is going to be correct. If you have a question, I'll share my opinion, and then you can decide whether it's right, partially right, or not right for you. How's that? Anyway, thank you for listening, and I look forward to chatting with you again real soon.